This episode of the Game Biz is brought to you by Netflix. For a free 30-day trial, just head on over to netflix.com/GameBreakerTV. Hello, hello, hello. What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Game Biz, the industry Q&A show, episode 7 for September 3rd, 2013. I'm Gary Gannon. You're watching Gamebreaker TV. Joining me, as always, Mr. Monty Sharma. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Gary. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. So we have, I love these interview shows. You've been on the road. Monty, goes on location. He brings stuff back. So you got this interview. You went over and visited Turbine.
Yep.
And this is Craig Alexander. What is his actual title there? What does he do?
He's the VP of Product Development. So, think of him as the guy who's in charge of all the titles. Okay. Anything we should set this up with? Or Craig's got a really deep history in the business. Like when he'll do his profile, you'll be amazed at all the things he's done. And it's really his view on a lot of things about the questions we normally get on what's happening in the industry. I really like his take on sort of the strength of the industry as well. So
cool. Let's roll it. Check it out.
Come back and talk.
Craig Alexander from Turbine.
That would be awesome. So I've been a gamer and video game enthusiast pretty much my entire life. In fact, got some old early video game units. In fact, my television's right here, sitting behind my desk. Yeah. Some of the old cartridges. Atari 2600 had some early PCs and personal computers as well. So I was always interested in the field. In fact, it was one of the things that got me interested in computer engineering. And so that's what I majored in college. Got out and actually entered the spacecraft industry. So I was supporting large NASA satellite projects and doing computer architecture and microprocessor design work for about 6 years before I decided to do a career switch. In fact, primarily did that because the job opportunities in the aerospace industry were changing quite a bit. In fact, the launch vehicle, which was the Space Shuttle Challenger, I don't know if you recall, was destroyed, and it was, people often remember a lot of the details about that event. One they may not realize is that a lot of the payloads that were on board were not only destroyed, and a lot of the projects that were queued up that could only be launched on the shuttle were all put on hold for many years. So that and a number of other issues led me to go back to graduate school. I ended up getting an MBA, and a lot of people use that opportunity to switch careers. It's a good time to do it because you get some foundation of general management experience, and then you decide what you want to do. Well, it was a really good time for the industry. This is about 20 years ago now, where it was just starting to take off, and so they were looking. It was transitioning from this very entrepreneurial hacker ethos, small, tiny development teams where you may be building games with 1 or 2 people and maybe a handful of contract art, and that was it. And moving from that mode to these large software engineering, system engineering projects. And so they needed technical management capability and people that understood the industry to enter the field so that they could build bigger and more ambitious projects. And so that's why I was brought in, and was able to enter the industry really early. And I joined a company called Sierra Online, which is one of the original game companies, and got to live outside of Yosemite National Park, which is a neat opportunity. So I moved there. At the time, we were the top game company in the industry. We were even bigger than EA back then.
Yeah.
And I got to build all the games with Quest in the title, from Police Quest to Space Quest to King's Quest, Quest for Glory, some other games called Phantasmagoria, Gabriel Knight, and also the first MMO. Back to Seattle, which is where the corporate headquarters of Sierra was run. And so I ended up running the Sierra studio for the next almost 6 years. And there was a series of events which led to it being divested and sold, and I ended up leaving, joining Electronic Arts. I worked there for 4 years in a variety of head of development capacities, And then also helped start a group called EA Partners, where we funded a lot of external titles that EA did. And so not only was I able to build my own games and own teams, which were a handful of MMOs and other projects, both on the console and PC, but fund and manage a portfolio of externally developed titles as well. And so got to be involved in a lot of the starting of a lot of the big franchises of EA and other companies. But after doing I was at EA for 4 years and spent about 2 years at Westwood Studios doing internal development, mostly online games, and then about 2 years at EA Partners. Joined Activision, run one of their Foster City, California studios for between 2 and 3 years, and then joined Turbine, which I considered sort of at the bullseye of what my passions and interests lied. Fantasy, RPGs, MMOs, and obviously given their background with Dungeons & Dragons Online and Lord of the Rings Online, it was really well suited. In addition, I had started the first incarnation of the Tolkien MMO many years ago back at Sierra. In fact, helped work and get it started at EA as well. And I've been working on the Tolkien property for quite some time, in and out. So coming back to Lotro, seeing it shipped, and then helping to manage that project for the last 6 years has been great. And left the West Coast, which is where a lot of the gaming jobs are, and have been in the Boston area ever since.
Awesome. So DDO and Lotro are, a couple of the few MMOs that have come out, let's say in the recent age of MMOs, who have survived. Do you think they would have survived without free-to-play?
They probably would have survived, although I don't think they would have been at the size and the scope they are today. I mean, the free-to-play transition, which we try to explain to our customers, has been so transformational in terms of the amount of resources that we can deploy to the titles, that it's been a wonderful addition and changed. And it also helped facilitate the sale to Warner Brothers, and has allowed us to be successful and work with one of the biggest media entertainment companies in the world. And so been very happy with it. It is ultimately a model that rewards, allows consumers to play and consume content at the pace they want. And so, and also leverages sort of the time and money trade-off that so many people have in their life. I mean, you either have a lot of time or you have money. Seldom you have both. And so, we can set up an environment where you can participate in our community and pay very little if you're willing to put in the time. On the other hand, if you want the conveniences and then items, you can monetize and purchase content at your own pace as well. But the key is flexibility and offering a healthy environment where all gamers can participate. And the same is true for DDO. And the neat thing about Turbine is because we had multiple MMOs that were live, and Asheron's Call 1 and 2 actually, being live, we were able to make the necessary investments, especially on the back end of the game. A lot of the infrastructure, the commerce infrastructure and the like, and a lot of these systems that we need to convert over to make the freemium business model a success.
What would you say to somebody who was building an MMO today? What advice would you give them?
It's a lot of work, and hire experienced, good people. A lot of MMOs struggle to even get released because they're just so technically complex and require teams of great designers, engineers, and the like, artists, and so forth, to be successful. And you need to be, you need to have that really good team in place, and you also have to be well financed. I mean, these projects are not trivial to build. The good news is with the business model conversions that we had talked about, they're a lot they're a lot cheaper to build, because no longer are you having to build towards a $50 or $60 retail box product. You can put something out in the market that's quite a bit smaller, that's free to players that want to play. But then devote a lot of your resources and energies once the product goes live to continue to invest. So it occurs later in the development cycle. And so your focus is much more on live operations than it is on building the original game up front and trying to sell it through a traditional retail channel. And so that's very powerful for a whole variety of reasons. It mitigates quite a bit of risk. And one of the ways it does this is through just extensive player feedback and community involvement. In effect, your players are helping you build the product. It's a term that I've used in the past called the democratization of design, of game design, where the players are participating in the creation of the world.
Well, so is there ever a struggle between sort of free-to-play business model and design ideas?
Yes. And there's a lot of mantras that we try to put in place to make sure that the free-to-play experience is not debilitating to the game. I mean, the last thing we want to do is view it as a form of cheating or pay to win. You hear a lot of terms out there, or be overly aggressive in how we monetize the property. It's critical that the game experience and gameplay be paramount. That the consumption of content and the experience that requires you to pay money is a positive experience for the player. As I mentioned before, it's as much about choice as it is about extracting money out of the customer. I mean, obviously, I think our players generally understand that we're a business and we need to we have lots of bills to pay and mouths to feed and the like, and so you need to operate a successful business, and that's done through offering players lots and lots of choices to experience and consume the games the way they see fit. And it's also why we're not just doing MMOs here anymore. We have a MOBA in development called Infinite Crisis, which is based on the DC multiverse, and that has an entirely different playstyle, which is very competitive, as opposed to a more cooperative experience from some of the MMOs. So this is an area that Turbine has excelled in for many years, dating back to Asheron's Call, and we're renewing our competitive focus and offering those players an opportunity to compete in a loved and well-known environment of the DC pantheon and the multiverse.
So that's kind of interesting. Is you really carry some big brands, sort of iconic brands in geekdom. That's impressive. What is it? Is it being part of Warner Brothers that gives you access to DC? Would you have been able to do it as Turbine? We might have, although Warner, obviously being part of Warner Brothers has been a tremendous benefit. In fact, one of probably the greatest benefits of being part of Warner Brothers is access to some of the best IP in the world. And independent companies do work with our IP on the occasion, but obviously being part of the family and part of the internal fold has its advantages. And you get to work very collaboratively with a lot of the creators, and we do so quite often with DC on the Tolkien side, and then as well as Dungeons and Dragons, which is still part of Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. How much overlap would you say there is between sort of building, maintaining an MMO and building and maintaining the MOBA? We use the same development engine, so quite a bit. So we have a central technology group that's sort of a multi-generational engine that we build and maintain. And sharing is essential because we're building a very expensive foundation that has to stand the test of time. And we have a term we call tenure code, where we're building systems to last for the long term, as opposed to traditional standalone games where it's fire and forget. You get them out on the shelves and you sort of don't pay attention to them anymore. This is quite a bit different, and so the cost, time, complexity, and experience level of the engineers necessary to make that successful. There's not a lot of those people, so you need to sort of spread their knowledge and their genius around to as much titles as possible. But it's quite a bit. A lot of it is in the behind the scenes where you don't normally think about, especially the commerce systems and the login systems and the administrations of the servers and the way some of the low-level, say, physics, path planning and the like, these capabilities are needed for all games.
as far as the customer-facing stuff, you try to develop an art style and a design that gives all the games a unique experience. I mean, the last thing you want is for all the games to look and play the same. And so, while I think a Turbine game has a certain feel to it, they all play quite a bit different and look quite a bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. So we get this question almost every week. I've got a great idea for a game. Who do I go talk to in a big game company?
So I think my best advice is you need to join a game company. I mean, unless you've been in the industry for years and you have access to capital and contacts and you have a proven track record, my recommendation is it's absolutely essential to get into the field. And there are a variety of ways to get in. I mentioned obviously the need for talented engineers and artists with great art backgrounds, great engineering backgrounds, design as well. In fact, there's great design programs now at a lot of the universities as well. The other way is to just get any job, get into QA, get into customer service. We have all sorts of folks in leadership positions that sort of grew through the ranks in that area. And if you have an idea, you may be able to leverage it.
Once
you've proven yourself and you've established the relationship, and this is a team sport. Right. I mean, you're never going to be, I shouldn't say never, it is very rare to build one of these by yourself. I mean, there's always the handful of exceptions out there, but which means you're going to need to put together a team that can actually execute on your vision. But there is a path to success. It can be done, but to think you can pitch a design doc to some random executive at some game company, maybe. Some people do it in school. You hear stories about Digipen and some of these others where all these games were incubated and percolated from the outside, but it's very rare.
So, in terms of people who are doing mid-career switches,
yes,
like you did,
more of an early career switch. Maybe.
You were younger, but let's say somebody who's in their 30s to 40, that sort of range. What advice would you give them if they want to get out of something horrible like financial services into something healing and healthy like games?
Find a discipline that's applicable to our industry. And there's a lot of those. I mean, we recruit all sorts of people in the area of business intelligence, e-commerce, data analytics. There's a number of marketing positions. There's a whole host of hosting and operations type roles where you're managing data centers and servers, IT roles, general engineering and database roles. You'd be surprised, or maybe not, that a lot of these positions there's quite a bit of overlap. I mean, database programmers are needed just about everywhere. It's a wonderful profession, and likewise good analytics background is helpful as well. And while there may be terrific jobs in business intelligence, like you said, in financial insurance services or in the insurance industry, you probably do this in the game industry as well, which can be an awful lot of fun.
Cool. What would you like people to know about the business of games? So, just from the money, financial side, is our industry healthy? What's going on?
It is. It's very large. It's now larger than the music industry. I still think it's smaller than the theatrical industry. Although, you hear stories that we've surpassed at the box office. The game industry is larger, but if you add up, DVD sales and pay-per-view and all that, and syndicate and then we're still smaller. But make no mistake, this is a real industry that's finally grown up. As that said, it's very professionally run. There's a lot of money behind it. The complexity is such that we need teams of professionals to succeed in this environment. It's not it's not just a few fly-by-night programmers who have some inspiration and put out a product in a few weeks' time. I mean, these efforts take years and years to develop and bring to fruition.
Very, 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 very good interview, sir. I think the big takeaway from me on that, which was really interesting, was the question we get every week. I have this idea for a game. Who do I go pitch it? What do I go do? And being straight up, just basically your chances of pitching a game with absolutely no experience are probably pretty close to none.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and do you ever go into like a car company and say, hey,
I
I've
wanna
got a
build a
great
car.
idea for a car. It's just because it's software doesn't mean, it doesn't take a certain amount of experience. So the funny thing is like I've tried to sort of write some story scripty kind of things, mainly because I'm messing around with storytelling software, trying to understand it. Not that I have any hope in hell writing a decent one, but it's hard. It's like, it's really hard. Like, just something simple is taking me hours. And, I think when you actually get into it, you see those sorts of problems.
Why do you think people have this perception that some of the jobs in the game industry are like, anyone can sort of do it? And, is it also just a cultural thing now with like how accessible things are with the internet and computers? And because I see the same thing in media with like, things like YouTube and things like that. Like everybody just feels like, everybody can do anything, which in some cases you sort of can because you do have the tools. And we talk about the tools right here. Like, hey, you want to make a game? Well, here there's Game Salad and here there's Unity. So the tools are available. But I think, why do you think people have that perception of just like, since the tool is acceptable, I'm the right person to do this?
Yeah, I have this theory, my smart guy fallacy. I'm a smart guy, you're a smart guy, we've done well in life, and we begin to think because we understand something, we can do it. And since, the democratization of development tools all over the place, since that stuff becomes accessible, you start thinking, oh, look, I play a ton of games. I know what would make this game better. And because I can think that, I start to think I can do it. It's like advertising. How many people say, I could come up with a better ad than that? Well, probably not one that hits that demographic, that, is able to get the message out, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's just sometimes people get carried away with that.
The hard thing is how do you come to that realization? How do you come to that honest realization that, this isn't for everybody, and, it's okay that I might think I have some good ideas, but that's all I have is some good ideas.
Well, I mean, if you looked at one of my home movies, they suck so bad, right? And
hey, I don't know. I saw that time lapse of your snow, your winter snowfall. That thing has been possibly going into like films across the world.
That's the best thing I ever did because I did nothing. But, it was my nephew got married, and my brother-in-law was complaining about, $4,000 for the video of the wedding. Well, we saw the video of the wedding, and the guy was able to actually turn it into something interesting. It wasn't like you were sitting there watching the whole thing again. So it's that sort of experience that you're trying to build, and we don't realize that. Like when you think about even things like free to play, it's really deeply thought about and understood when they put things in, because yes, they want to get paid, but no, they don't want to piss you off. They don't want to delay you from playing the game, all that sort of stuff. So finding those balances is tricky and takes experience.
I think going back to the free to play thing for one second, is like we're still such in its infancy that we're still seeing all kinds of weird moves by different companies where they maybe have the best intentions, but who knows if that's really what comes out of it. But Lotro's done a really good job. Turbine's been one of the companies that done a great job with the free to play model. Really fair, really well thought out. I think more companies should actually look at how they've kind of structured their free to play model.
Yeah, no, they were the pioneers in the West. It had been happening in Asia for years before that. And Craig, was instrumental behind doing that. And, I know of other things that they've done in terms of they've looked at market expansions, they've looked at platform changes, all sorts of things like that. And as they sort through all these things, and these are things that, a test will cost you $10 million, that they're looking really hard at. Figuring out and perfecting that free-to-play side is probably one of the biggest things, and now they can take that knowledge into other games. It's you hear now that Rift free-to-play. I sent you that link the other day about WoW starting to float that balloon. Everybody's finding right now free-to-play is easier on the marketing side, more profitable on the revenue side, and if you do it right, you don't piss your players off.
Mr. Monty Sharma, follow him on Twitter at Monster, MONTSEER27. And if you have a question for Monty, send it to monty@gamebreaker.tv. That is the email address you can send questions, monty@gamebreaker.tv. Great interview, and always a pleasure, sir. You can follow me at Gary Gannon on the Twitter, and we do the show live every single Tuesday at 3 PST, or PDT. So come on over for the live show, and we'll see you next week for some more Game Biz.